So it's that time of the week again, weekend preview time, looking ahead to the major racing taking place in 2 days' time.
Yep, ahead of the game today.
Yeah, slightly ahead of the game, a bit earlier this week. It's quite a good week. We were talking last week about racing suffers from the blues in January, but on the flip side, we've got the Clarence House and we've also got a really solid card at Haydock as well.
Yeah, and if you remember 12 months ago, I think you were there, you saw Bristol de May sloshing through the mud
to win
the Haydock Marsh Chase. So it's and the other thing to add in it is one of the two 48-hour deck races, which will become standard at Cheltenham, but it's still fairly rare, and it means that we can get a bit of a head start on it. So hence Thursday rather than Friday.
Yeah. So would you like to start with the Clarence House or with Haydock?
Yeah, it's up to you.
Dealer's choice. Well, I've got Haydock in front of me, so we'll start with Haydock.
Yeah, okay.
So the first one we're looking at is the Champion Hurdle Trial. So it's probably one of the races in the Champion Hurdle pattern that is less likely to give us clues, but we have got one in here who's probably one of the most popular horses in training.
Yeah, he is.
He's won this 3 times on the bounce, a new one. He's 6-4 this year against some intriguing names. Has he got a favourites chance?
Undoubtedly, yeah. And because of the bigger field than normal in this race, he's probably a bigger price than he ordinarily would be. If you look through his form this year, it's not far off as good as he's ever produced. His run particularly, I thought in the Greatwood, was a smasher. And if they could ride that race again last time at Cheltenham, I think they'd probably gone harder and tried to run the finish out of My Tentor Yours. As it was, he still beat and admittedly troubled in running Chittabello, and he still went down, conceding weight to My Tentor Yours, who has shown over time that he's a better horse than the new one. So on the book, it was a far from disgraceful run. Conditions are in his favour. He's often scrambled home in this race, admittedly, and he did so when he beat Klein last year. He can tend to jump right, but his jumping has been better this season. It's taken a while, but it's definitely got there. And he's shown subsequently as well when he beat Klein at Foss last, conceding 13, that he's basically got the beating of that horse. So that's one you can perhaps put a line through. If you're looking for a danger at those prices, instead of being Chittabello 5-2, you'd maybe be looking at Call Me Lord, who's a young up-and-comer onto the scene, but putting a serious handicap performance at Sandown last time. But there's that inbuilt class thing. Now, he could be ready for this grade at some point, but the new one would have won that race with ease as well. Our Merlin was a very progressive horse, and he was conceding lumps to him, but the new one would have conceded lumps and probably more. So I think at odds against, in a race in which he's primed almost every year and manages to get it done, why buck tradition when you think that his jumping is better than it's been and he looks in a really good place at present? So yeah, he'd do for me. He's unimaginative, but there's a case for saying he should be odds on in this company.
Very quickly, it is prone to getting bottomless at Haydock.
Yeah. Is
that a problem for him, or is he all right on that sort of ground?
I think he's okay. I don't think many horses love ground like this. They just, it's survival of the fittest, who's best equipped to cope with it. In terms of stamina, he'd score pretty highly, wouldn't he? Agrippa would likewise. He'd be a potential runner because he does stay very well, but he's so prone to mistakes that he can just blunder his chance away at any given moment. But yeah, look, it's not a strong bet. It's not 2 or 3 pointer. You probably just have a point on whatever your staking plan is, a point on the new one, because the 6-4 in places as short as 11-10 is probably more like his price.
Okay, so the new one in the Champion Hurdle Trial, and we'll jump to the Peter Marsh, which of course was won so emphatically by Bristol de May last year. I've noted down it was 168 as Timeform performance rating that day, which is Gold Cup level really. And
if the Gold Cup was run at Haydock on heavy ground, he'd be odds on to win it every year, wouldn't he?
He would,
he probably would win it every year. He could run in this, and he could have everything else off 10 stone or something, and he's just such a unique horse. He would bludgeon them. But the interesting thing is, I think the most intriguing runner this year is another Twiston Davis representative in Tintern Theatre, because this horse stays all day and has looked like that from the very start. He's unexposed as a stayer. I thought he had the Kempton race won all the way around, and that comes from someone who'd backed Brandon Hill against him that day. I was never, for a second, did I think that we got away from Tintern Theatre, who I thought might struggle with a sharp track, but nothing of the sort. He got into the race travelling really strongly, and then, as you'd expect, saw things out thoroughly as well. That's more what we're accustomed to with him. The fact that Twiston Davis is targeting him at a race that he won with his best horse 12 months ago, perhaps there's something in that as well. But in a race that I think is short of mud lovers that are going to still be standing at the end, I think he scores fairly highly because I've thought all along he's a thorough stayer, and we've got the Dutchman top at the minute, but I'd have stamina doubts with him. Yalarenki's very effective in the mud, but is he effective in the mud at Haydock when it's over this distance? I don't think Captain Redbeard will benefit from these conditions. And Rot the Casbah, probably erroneously, was taken out of the rerouted Chepstow Welsh Grand National because of the ground, so I don't know where we stand with him. I think ratings almost go out the window in a race like this. It's survival of the fittest, survival of the most stamina laden. I'd have Tintern Theatre top of that list. I can see the likes of Knock and Rawley still being there at the end as well and giving him most to think about. But yeah, I don't think you're going to get a horse to glide through this on the bridle and quick and clear. It's going to be you'll be watching it through your fingers, I think, because it's not going to be very pretty at the end.
No, rarely is.
Just like me.
So over to Ascot for the Clarence House, and it's becoming something of a tradition now, isn't it? This race that we get smaller fields.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of problem in the division, really. The Tingle Creek had to be reopened. It's essentially a match here between Undersow and Brain Power, 4-7, 11-4. There's been a lot of publication this week about Brain Power, the big gamble.
Yeah.
Is it just a case of there being nothing else to take Undersow on with?
Perhaps, yeah, and probably a case that they knew he was a confirmed runner, so that's half the battle, isn't it, anti-post? But we now 40-hour decks, the picture's a bit clearer, and I do like Brain Power, and I like him around these sort of tracks, like to Ascot, Kempton, but the gap he's got to bridge is vast, really. In an ideal world, you'd want the ground even more testing for Undersow. They're calling it soft, good to soft in places at present. It wasn't quite so testing as suits him best. I mean, he likes the ground as it was at Cork the other day, which was so bad they abandoned the rest of the card. So he wants it as deep as it can possibly be, and it wasn't as deep when he got beaten by Fox Norton at Punchestown last season. But that's Fox Norton, and Brain Power is not in his league yet. I think this is I don't want to say a penalty kick, but at those prices, in fact, I've been more minded to back Carmore Lock against Undersow, just a second start for the stable. I think Harry Fry has inherited a well-handicapped horse anyway, yet he's happy to spurn the opportunity to go for a Grade 1. He's been entered in the Peterborough, was taken out when that race was rearranged, so he's clearly picking his spot carefully here. If you gave me 9-4 or whatever he'd be in a match bet against Brain Power, I'd take that, but how did they beat Undersow? Even his form away from bottomless ground is a cut above these. Speridek may act as spoiler, but Undersow doesn't have to lead. He'll probably just chase him, and 5-2 is a bad price, really, isn't it, about Brain Power? The amount he's got to prove, and he's coming into it on the back of a fall where he'd been firmly put in his place anyway. Okay,
so Undersow there.
Yeah, again, I don't think he's a bet. No. But he's the most likely winner. If on the day people are offering distance markets and stuff, maybe you wanted to take a slightly bigger price that he wins by a certain distance or more, but he's just a grade above these. What would Brain Power have done last year in the Ryanair? And what would he have done in the previous year's Champion Chase? I mean, he wouldn't be near them, would he? And he does have that blip at Sandown to put behind him.
I'll spin it around very subtly. At what price would Brain Power have to be for you to be interested?
Like 9-2, probably 5s.
So it tells you what.
Yeah, you've missed the price, haven't you? If you haven't gotten the fancy prices here in the week, you're now being asked to take 5-2 about a horse who has about 1.5 stone to find in our figures against a horse in Undersow who has barely any blips on his record. He runs to a similar level almost every time, and it's a devastatingly high level, too high for so many horses that he comes up against. Yeah, if the ground was softer, he'd be an absolute moral probably, but even with the ground not hock deep as it was at Cork last time, I think he'll take care of these.
So we'll quickly look at Friday as well. I believe you've got a nap and a next best for us.
Yeah, that's something we introduced last time. Next best, I'm going for a more established chaser, because she said so, who runs in the 350 at Chepstow. Now, I may be barking up the wrong tree here, but I think this horse is worth one last chance at the trip, because he keeps getting outstayed or weakening over long distances. He was smashed into favouritism in a race at Lingfield 2 starts ago, beat the rest convincingly, but ran into a chasing debutant who, in Churchill, who he just had to take it on the chin. He then ran over 3, extended 3, didn't get home, maybe he's got a hole in him, but he sneaks into a 0 to 100, giving weight to horses rated in the 70s, some of these, I think he can prove too good for them. And I was down at Chepstow when Venetia saddled pressurised to win the race, that he basically should be running her honour now, because she was winning it for 5 of the last 6 years. Conditions are Venetia conditions, apparently, at Chepstow tomorrow. And when the mud's flying, that's when I'm interested in her horses. And if there was no other angle with this horse, if he was running over 3, it wouldn't be. But if 2 transforms him, he could win easily. Then the other end of the spectrum, Nick.
Yeah.
Young Hurdler, 1240 Musselburgh. We've got the Brian Ellison horse Hall Arnie, who was with Philip Hyde on the flat, reached a fairly high level, had his first run over hurdles at Catterick in the race won by the Frankel, the first ever Frankel saxophone,
yeah,
and shaped okay. But then I thought took his form to another level when he got within 10 lengths of Rhodesian at Kempton.
Bumped into 2 decent ones.
He has, absolutely. Particularly the latter, who we have as our currently top-rated juvenile hurdler after what he did again the other day. This is just a considerably easier task. And if you were to draw in ideal circumstances for a horse who was a 1.25 mile speed type on the flat, you'd go Musselburgh. Just hope the meeting gets the go-ahead. We've got him maybe £15 clear, because he's getting a huge juvenile allowance, and we've rated his latest run 122. BHA have said he's run to 110, so we've got him unusually far clear. We won't have many horses in handicaps that are, say, exception of a horse that wins by 20 lengths and doesn't have a penalty, that far clear in a handicap. So he's an extremely interesting runner for us tomorrow. Conditions are ideal, and if you take literally what he did on the clock last time relative to Cave Grace in the 2 mile handicap, you'd agree with us, I think, that he's a standout at the weights.
Okay, so that's in the 1240.
1240 Mus Hall Arnie, 350 Chepstow, because she said so.
Excellent. I believe you've got things to do, places to be, people to see, so we'll leave it at that. And hopefully it was 2 winners last week, I believe. So
thank you. Cheers, Nick.